Right now, immigration is the open-ended answer of the most important problem facing America by 28% of Americans, and that is a very significant increase just coming up in the last several months. So as the situation at the border gets more critical, I think this topic is going to absolutely be coming up time and again. The other point on immigration that's interesting is when we ask people, why do you disapprove of President Biden? One of the most important and frequently mentioned subjects is in fact immigration, second to which only is how he's managing the economy. So both the economy and immigration, I think, are going to be really critical for Americans. They have been in the past, less immigration, but I think what's happening right now is pretty consistent. And also other data points show that more Americans beyond just folks who are traditionally concerned about immigration are growing more concerned about the situation right now. Another data point we'll be releasing soon is that right now, a majority of Americans, I believe it's 55% of those that are dissatisfied with the state of immigration in the country, want to see less people coming into the country. And that's also a relative high when you look at the past, several years to a decade. So immigration is absolutely perking up as a more potent subject for people as they think about this election.
Well, for voters who are going to be making their decisions based on the economy, Mohamed, it's not looking good for Joe Biden. As you wrote recently, political economic indicators not promising for the president. Sub 50% presidential job ratings have usually resulted in electoral defeat. So what are we talking about here?
President Biden right now, looking at historical metrics, and my colleague Jeff Jones did a great run-up of all of the really important 5 to 6 metrics that we've looked at with previous presidents at similar moments in their presidency seeking re-election. He's behind almost every single one of them on every single metric. With the exception of President Carter on some of them, he definitely is behind. And I think that's a really important thing to realize and keep in the forefront of our minds as we look to November. However, we're also seeing now the third month of continued improvement in Americans' economic confidence in the situation with the economy here at home. So our economic confidence index asks Americans to think about the economy right now and where they think it's going, essentially. And this will be the third month where we've seen an improvement. So that's moving in the right direction. But a lot of these other traditional historic metrics are not promising for President Biden. His 3-year average at 39.8% has him behind everybody but Carter at this point in their presidency. And that number now we're going to release later this afternoon will be 38, which is our new number that actually isn't published yet. But when we come out with that, that means that he's now almost 2 points below his own 3-year average at this point in the campaign.
So it raises the question of what he is going to be able to campaign on or to try to do to improve his image. What issues can work in his favor? And I want to ask you about abortion specifically because we know that has resulted in a very high voter turnout in Democratic victories in the midterms and in some other special elections across a number of states. And of course, we've seen just within the last week in Alabama, the Supreme Court there ruling that an embryo is a child, a life that must be protected, calling into question IVF treatments, fertility treatments that even conservatives have been very public about supporting broadly. This kind of fertility treatment is supportive. How do you think that may serve as a catalyst come this November, when we're even further out from the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and yet you're still feeling the effects with new developments like this one?
It's interesting that this is a topic now that will be implicated into the public conscience really through local decision making, right? Because that's where a lot of these things happen, as a situation you just mentioned. Overall, what we found in our decades-old trends, after the Dobbs decision, America has increasingly become slightly, not dramatically, but more identifying more as pro-choice. And those who are experiencing dissatisfaction with the state of abortion laws want to see less, not more restrictive laws in the country. Roe v. Wade was an interesting case in that over 6 in 10 Americans didn't want to see it overturned. So it was by nature a uniquely unpopular decision. What's interesting is that since then, what we've seen is a slight cooling of those temperaments. So for example, people identifying as pro-choice, it was 55%. Last year, it's down to 52% this year. So it's that cooling you see consistently across those metrics. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is that people who identify as pro-life are also on the uptick now. So we're kind of in a recalibration moment in terms of public opinion reacting to the Roe v. Wade overthrow. But again, the more that these state decisions bring this topic back into focus, the more the significant, now 28% of Americans that say that the candidate they vote for has to share their views, and that's increased notably since Roe v. Wade. Those voters are going to be mobilized by that national focus, and it's going to show in their vote.